I watched through the surveillance monitor as my wife Jessica applied the finishing touches to her makeup, getting ready for what she thought would be a perfect evening. She had no idea that two private investigators were already positioned outside the apartment building, cameras ready, waiting to document her betrayal. She also didn't know that I'd been planning this moment for weeks, setting up the perfect trap with help from an unlikely ally, the wife of the man Jessica was about to meet. What happened next would be captured on video and used to destroy not just our marriage, but her custody of our children, her reputation, and her entire future. Sometimes the person you think you're fooling is actually 3 steps ahead of you. And sometimes, when you're caught red-handed, there's absolutely nowhere to hide. Quick, drop a comment telling me where you're watching from and whether you've ever had to gather evidence to protect yourself in a relationship. Now, if you've ever suspected someone of betraying you but needed proof, smash that subscribe button because this story is about a carefully orchestrated investigation that left no room for denial. Hit that like button if you think people who abandon their responsibilities deserve to face consequences. Let's dive into how I exposed my cheating wife. My name is Mike Martinez, and 3 weeks ago, I was just another trusting husband who believed his wife when she said she was working late. Today, I'm sitting in my lawyer's office, watching video footage that's about to end my 8-year marriage and change my daughter's lives forever. It started with little things. Jessica, my wife of 8 years and mother of our 2 daughters, had been acting differently for about a month. She was staying out later, taking more interest in her appearance, and becoming secretive about her phone. I'm not naturally suspicious, but I'm also not stupid. When your wife starts wearing perfume to go grocery shopping and comes home 3 hours later with no groceries, you start asking questions. The breaking point came when our neighbor, Mrs. Rodriguez, called me at work one Tuesday afternoon. Mrs. Rodriguez's voice was hesitant, concerned. "Mike, I don't want to cause trouble, but I think you should know Emma was crying last night because she couldn't find her mommy. When I went over to check, Jessica wasn't home. The girls were alone." My blood ran cold. Emma is 6, and our younger daughter Sophie is only 4. They should never be home alone, especially not at night. I tried to keep my voice steady despite the panic rising in my chest. "How long were they alone?" "I'm not sure, but it was at least 2 hours. I stayed with them until Jessica came home around midnight. She seemed surprised to see me there. That night, I confronted Jessica about it. She had a ready explanation. She'd run out to get medicine for Sophie's cough, and the pharmacy had been busy. It sounded reasonable, but something in her eyes told me she was lying. I started paying closer attention. Jessica's work emergencies always seemed to happen on the same nights of the week. Her phone was constantly buzzing with messages she'd quickly delete. She'd started taking showers immediately when she came home, even from quick errands. 2 weeks later, Mrs. Rodriguez called again. Her voice was more urgent this time, tinged with frustration. "Mike, I hate to bother you, but it happened again. The girls were alone, and Emma came to my door asking where her mama was. This has to stop." That's when I made the decision that would change everything. I called Patricia Chen, a divorce attorney my brother had recommended, and explained the situation. Patricia's tone was blunt and professional. "Mike, you need evidence. Suspicions aren't enough in family court. If you want to protect your daughters and yourself, you need documentation." She referred me to Tom Bradley, a private investigator who specialized in matrimonial cases. Tom was a former police detective who looked like someone's grandfather but had the instincts of a bloodhound. Tom leaned forward in his chair, his expression serious. "Mr. Martinez, I need you to understand something. Once we start this investigation, there's no going back. If your wife is having an affair, we're going to find out. And once you know for certain, you'll have to decide what to do with that information." I hired him that day. Tom's first assignment was simple: follow Jessica on her next work emergency. It didn't take long. 3 days later, Jessica announced she had to work late on a client presentation. I kissed her goodbye, wished her luck, and immediately called Tom. I spoke into the phone with determination. She just left. Black Honda Civic, heading downtown. 2 hours later, Tom called me back. His voice was grim but not surprised. Mr. Martinez, you're going to want to sit down for this. Jessica hadn't gone to her office. She'd driven to an upscale restaurant downtown where she'd met a man Tom described as tall, dark hair, expensive suit. They'd had dinner, drinks, and from their body language, this wasn't their first date. Did you get photos? I asked, though I already knew the answer. Tom's response was efficient and thorough. Clear shots of both of them. And Mr. Martinez? I ran the plates on his car. His name is Ryan Patterson. He's married. The investigation expanded from there. Tom discovered that Jessica and Ryan had been meeting regularly for almost a month. They'd been to restaurants, hotels, and most frequently, an apartment that belonged to Ryan's friend. But Tom had an idea that would take our investigation to the next level. Tom's voice carried a strategic edge. Mr. Martinez, I'd like to contact Ryan's wife. If she doesn't know about the affair, she deserves to. And if we coordinate our efforts, we can gather much stronger evidence. Linda Patterson was a marathon runner and marketing executive who took the news about her husband's affair with the same strategic thinking she brought to her business. Instead of confronting Ryan immediately, she wanted to plan something more comprehensive. Linda's voice was cold and calculating during our first phone call. Mike, my husband has been lying to me for months. Your wife has been endangering your children. I think we owe it to ourselves to make sure they face appropriate consequences. Linda's plan was brilliant. She'd discovered that Ryan had been using his friend Marcus's apartment for his meetings with Jessica. Marcus was out of town for work, and Ryan had a spare key. We'd set up surveillance on the apartment and catch them in the act. But Linda had an even better idea. Her voice grew more intense as she outlined her plan. What if we didn't just catch them? What if we confronted them while the cameras were rolling? I want my husband to know that I know, and I want it documented. Over the next week, we planned everything down to the minute. Tom would bring his partner, Greg, to handle the video equipment. They'd position themselves to get clear footage of Jessica and Ryan together. Then, at exactly the right moment, Linda would make her dramatic entrance. Linda explained with military precision, the key is timing. We want them relaxed and comfortable, thinking they're safe. Then we want the shock of discovery while the cameras are still rolling. I had mixed feelings about the plan. Part of me just wanted to confront Jessica privately and try to work things out. But another part of me, the part that thought about my daughters being left alone at night, wanted her to face real consequences. Tom spoke with the wisdom of experience when I expressed my doubts. Mike, in family court, evidence is everything. A recording of them together, followed by a confrontation where they can't deny what happened, that's gold. That's the kind of proof that protects your children. The night of the operation, I stayed home with Emma and Sophie. I'd hired a babysitter, something Jessica never bothered to do, and told the girls we were having a movie night. They were excited to have Daddy all to themselves. At 8 p.m., my phone buzzed with a text from Tom, Eagle has landed. Target acquired. Jessica had arrived at the apartment right on schedule. She was wearing a dress I'd bought her for our anniversary last year and carrying a bottle of wine I recognized from our kitchen. At 8:15, Tom sent another message, both subjects inside. Cameras rolling. Clear visual confirmation. I sat on my couch, watching my daughters laugh at their movie, while two private investigators documented my wife's betrayal in real time. It was surreal. At 9:30, Linda sent her own message, moving in. Wish me luck. What happened next was captured on high-definition video that would later be played in family court. Linda used Ryan's spare key to enter the apartment and found exactly what we'd expected to find. The confrontation was explosive. I watched the footage later that evening, after Jessica had come home in tears and the whole truth had finally come out. Seeing my wife with another man was painful, but seeing her face when Linda revealed how much we all knew that was justice. Linda had done her homework. She knew about every meeting, every lie, every time Jessica had abandoned our children for her affair. She'd brought copies of phone records, credit card statements, and even screenshots of text messages. But the most devastating moment came when Linda handed Jessica an envelope. Linda spoke with icy calm as she extended the envelope. A gift from your husband. Inside were divorce papers and an emergency custody petition I'd filed that morning. While Jessica thought she was being clever, I'd been building a legal case with my attorney's help. Linda continued with relentless precision. You see, Jessica, while you've been playing house with my husband, yours has been documenting every lie you've told and every time you've endangered your children. The video showed Jessica's face crumpling as she realized how thoroughly she'd been outmaneuvered. Ryan, meanwhile, looked like he wanted to disappear into the floor. When Jessica came home that night, I was waiting in the living room with Sarah Williams from Child Protective Services. I'd called them earlier that evening, explaining that my wife had been leaving our children unattended while she conducted an extramarital affair. Sarah spoke with official authority when Jessica walked through the door. Mrs. Martinez, we need to discuss some concerns about child supervision in this household. Jessica looked between Sarah and me, her face pale with shock. She was still holding the divorce papers Linda had given her. Jessica stammered in confusion, I don't understand. Mike, what's going on? I spoke with calm determination. What's going on is that I know about Ryan. I know about every time you've left Emma and Sophie alone. I know about every lie you've told me for the past month. I handed her a folder containing printed screenshots of her text messages with Ryan, credit card statements showing dinners and hotel visits, and witness statements from Mrs. Rodriguez documenting the nights she'd found our children alone. Jessica's voice was barely a whisper, filled with disbelief. How did you get all this? The same way Linda got evidence about Ryan's affairs. We worked together. Sarah had seen enough. Based on the documented pattern of child neglect and Jessica's admission that she'd been having an affair, she implemented an emergency custody order removing Jessica from the home pending a full investigation. Sarah delivered the order with bureaucratic efficiency. Mrs. Martinez, you'll need to find alternative housing immediately. Mr. Martinez will retain custody of the children while we conduct our review. Jessica spent that night at her mother's house. Her mother, Patricia, was devastated when she learned what Jessica had been doing. Patricia's voice was heavy with disappointment and hurt. How could you put those babies at risk for a man? How could you be so selfish? The next morning, I was in family court with my attorney, presenting our evidence to Judge Harrison. The video footage was particularly compelling. It showed Jessica in a compromising situation while her children were home alone. Judge Harrison was not impressed with Jessica's choices. The judge spoke with stern disapproval from the bench. Mrs. Martinez, the evidence presented shows a pattern of placing personal desires above child welfare. Until you can demonstrate that you've addressed these issues, custody will remain with Mr. Martinez. The fallout from that night destroyed Jessica's life systematically. Ryan, faced with his own divorce proceedings and potential job loss, wanted nothing to do with her. He moved out of state within 2 weeks, leaving Jessica to face the consequences alone. Jessica's law firm terminated her employment after learning about the affair and custody issues. In her profession as a paralegal, personal conduct mattered, and the partners decided she was a liability they couldn't afford. Her friends gradually distanced themselves as word spread about what had happened. The video footage had been entered into court records, making it a matter of public record. In our small legal community, everyone knew the story. Jessica moved in with her mother temporarily, but even that relationship was strained. Patricia was ashamed of her daughter's choices and struggled to understand how Jessica could have risked her children's safety. Patricia told me during one of our conversations about the girls, her voice filled with sadness, I didn't raise you to be this selfish. Those babies needed their mother, and she abandoned them for excitement. Meanwhile, I was adapting to life as a single father. I reduced my work hours to spend more time with Emma and Sophie and hired a reliable nanny for the times when I had to travel for business. The girls adjusted better than I'd expected. They missed their mother, but they felt more secure knowing that someone would always be home with them. Emma, who had been having nightmares about being alone, started sleeping through the night again. Jessica was allowed supervised visits twice a week. She'd sit in a sterile room at the Family Services building while a social worker observed her interactions with our daughters. The contrast between her old life and her new reality was stark. 6 months after that night at the apartment, I found myself in a completely different place. The divorce had been finalized with Jessica receiving minimal visitation rights and no alimony. The evidence of her affair and child neglect had made her case impossible to defend. I'd started dating again, this time, a kindergarten teacher named Rebecca who understood the importance of putting children first. Emma and Sophie adored her, and for the first time in months, our house felt like a home again. Linda Patterson had also rebuilt her life successfully. Her divorce from Ryan was finalized quickly, and she'd used the experience to start a consulting business helping other betrayed spouses navigate divorce proceedings. Linda often told her clients with the authority of experience, the key is documentation and patience. Don't act on emotion. Build your case systematically, and when you're ready to move, make sure it's decisive. Jessica, meanwhile, was working as a receptionist at a medical clinic, the only job she could find with her damaged reputation. She lived in a small apartment and saw our daughters 4 hours a week under supervision. The most painful part for me wasn't the end of my marriage, it was seeing how Jessica's choices had affected Emma and Sophie. Emma had started therapy to deal with abandonment anxiety, and Sophie still asked sometimes why Mommy didn't live with us anymore. But they were healing. Children are resilient, and with consistent care and attention, they were learning to trust again. Rebecca had been particularly helpful in this process, bringing stability and warmth to our family. 2 years later, I married Rebecca in a small ceremony with Emma and Sophie as our flower girls. Jessica wasn't invited, though she was allowed a brief visit with the girls before the ceremony during her regular supervised time. Jessica had completed court-ordered counseling and parenting classes, but the damage to her relationship with our daughters was lasting. They were polite during visits but no longer saw her as a primary figure in their lives. The most satisfying part wasn't Jessica's downfall, it was the life I'd built from the ashes of her betrayal. I had full custody of my daughters, a wife who treasured our family, and the peace of mind that comes from making decisions based on truth rather than deception. I kept copies of the surveillance footage, not as a trophy but as a reminder. Tom Bradley had written something on the back of his business card that night, truth always surfaces. The only question is how much damage is done while it's buried. Jessica had buried the truth for months, thinking she was cleverer than everyone around her. But truth has a way of surfacing at the worst possible moment for those who try to hide it. I'd learned that protecting my children sometimes meant making hard choices. I'd learned that gathering evidence was more powerful than making accusations. And I'd learned that sometimes the person who seems to be winning is actually about to lose everything. Looking back, I don't regret the surveillance, the coordination with Linda, or the systematic way we exposed the affair. Jessica's choices had put my daughters at risk, and my job as their father was to protect them from further harm. The video footage that destroyed Jessica's life had also saved Emma and Sophie from years of uncertainty and neglect. That trade-off was worth every difficult moment of the process. Sometimes people ask if I feel bad about how thoroughly we destroyed Jessica's life. The answer is simple, she destroyed it herself with her choices. We just documented the destruction and made sure there were appropriate consequences. In the end, justice isn't about revenge, it's about ensuring that actions have consequences and that innocent people are protected from those who would harm them. So we've reached the end of today's story. Do you think my approach was justified, or should I have tried to work things out privately? I want to hear your thoughts, was this revenge or just protecting my children? Drop your opinions in the comments below and let's get a discussion going. If this story of documented justice kept you hooked, smash that like button. And if you're new here, hit subscribe for more stories where evidence and planning lead to undeniable consequences. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.